Welcome everybody to week number 2 on the Oscar reviews on the documentary, foreign language, and animated films. As this week, we will be looking into films that were nominated for Best Foreign Language Film, which this past year's Oscars has to be the biggest year for the media of foreign language films. Because not also we got one film that got a Best Picture nominations with 9 additional ones, 2 films that were nominated for Best Director, with one of them being a standalone nomination, which gets in Director but doesn't get in the picture lineup. A Fathers and Sons nominated for Best Documentary Feature, which I reviewed last week. A Japanese anime nominated for Best Animated Feature, which I will be talking about in another week. 3 were nominated for Cinematography, with The Favorite and A Star is Born. And the Sweden film Border, which did not make it on the Oscar shortlist for foreign, got in for makeup and hairstyling. My gosh, that's a lot. But outside of those, I'm here to talk about those that were nominated for Best Foreign Language Film. As I talk about the life of a Syrian refugee running away from home, 2 people from different backgrounds for a romance attempt during a war in the 1950s, somewhat, an artist who had his dreams but also fall in love, a domestic worker or maid taking care of the family's children and dealing with a little issue she has, and a poor family illegally hiding a little girl to help her while they deal with their life with less money. And the films that I'm talking about are Capernaum from Lebanon, Cold War from Poland, Never Look Away from Germany, Roma from Mexico, and Shoplifters from Japan. And as always, I review these films based on what I think was the least likely to win to the one that ended up being the winner, which you know on Friday, or as I would say, the film that got a Best Picture nomination. But we're not going with that film yet. We're starting an actual kind of a deja vu here on where I place this film, specifically this movie from this country. It's the film from Lebanon. Now, last year, the country finally received its first nomination in this category for The Insult, which, if you saw my reviews last year, it was the first one I reviewed for the last year's foreign language lineup. A year later, they got nominated again, but this time with the director that had her films previously submitted before for the country, Carmel in 2007, and Where Do We Go Now in 2011. So now, in 2018, one of her films finally got that nomination, and that is the film that won the jury prize at the Cannes Film Festival, Capernaum. Directed, produced, and written by Nadine Labaki, this film is somewhat true, but not really, as this film is about a 12-year-old boy named Zayn, and he decides to run away from home because what his parents did to his sister by selling her to an older man for marriage, and they're abusive to him. While on his journey, he ends up helping an undocumented Ethiopian worker named Rahil, going under the name Tigris, to look after her baby boy Jonas. Not only that, but the entire film is told in a flashback format, where in the present he is in jail and in court. Why? Well, in the beginning of the film it does kind of explain, but I don't want to give it anything away, and I gotta say, I was impressed by this film. Mainly through the incredible performances of this film. And yes, I do know the filming was a bit struggle because it was a bit real, but Zayn, who is actually named Zayn, probably gives one of the best youth performances of 2018, and this is coming from a person who has not watched 8th grade yet. What Zayn does in this film is he really stands up for himself, especially his abusive parents, to protect his sister, and even taking care of the baby while Tigris was gone. Also, in the technical aspects, it's definitely well shot. Definitely should have been a cinematography nomination, even though there were 3 others, which I'll talk about in the remainder of the week, and the score done by Nadine's husband. Oh, by the way, speaking of Nadine, even if she's the director of the film, she even plays Zayn's lawyer for the present of the story. I mean, who else would you play your lawyer in your movie than the director herself? I'm also glad that we didn't get much of the court aspect of the film, because, well, The Insult last year, but it is a key element. If there is any issues, would have to be the minimal amounts of dialogue, mainly through the second act where Zayn had to look after the kid. There's also other moments here, but it's very small. Now, do I think it's better than The Insult? Actually, they're both even for me. They're both good films, but not fantastic. And the biggest part for both is their well-crafted performances. So if you did enjoy The Insult, or if you want a movie where a kid stands up for himself, watch this. However, if the subject might be a little bit bland of the typical runaway story, it might be only worth a watch once. Now I do know that Nadine had over 12 hours filmed since it did took 2 years and 6 months to edit, but if it was for the 12 hours, if they did kept it in the final film, it would take me like a week to finish this film. But I'm fine with the 2-hour mark. So now we leave the Arab country of Lebanon and go east to Japan.